Today, as the dumpster fire burns, this is extremely upsetting and extremely disappointing news to see. If anyone has ever read the book Moss, it's from Mouse, by Art Spiegelman, this is a classic. My my grandfather was there at fighting on the beaches of Normandy and was fought throughout World War II. Got three Purple Hearts, actually, during World War II. One of the only people to come back in his platoon. And yeah, it was really important to him as I was growing up to constantly educate me on the Holocaust and all the things that happened and to remember, because as soon as we forget, that's when it happens again. And this book, Moss by Art Spiegelman, entered my life. I think I was 9 years old, 9 or 10. And I read it from cover to cover in one sitting. And it was insane because it was going through the life of Art Spiegelman's grandfather, who was in Auschwitz in the concentration camp. I mean, it was an amazing piece of work. It was something that I could easily read as a child because it was, a comic book. I was into comics. And it showed, it was just honest and truthful about what it was like to live during those times. And history is important. It's important to learn history. But today it's not important to learn history. Today it's important to burn the books that certain people don't want you to read. And somehow Mouse is on the chopping block as the next banned book. So let's get into this. Art Spiegelman sees the new ban of his book Mouse as a red alert. Art Spiegelman didn't set out to write an educational aid for young adult readers a half a century ago. He simply wanted to better know his own origin story, discover more about his parents' history, and to hear from his father, a Polish Jew and a survivor, how some of the relatives were killed in the Holocaust. In an interview Thursday, he remembers his mindset in his 20s. I never meant to teach anybody anything. Now, though, given the latest roiling debate over which books can be banned from schools and libraries, the author of the seminal graphic memoir, Mouse, appreciates his work's long cultural tale, and I'm grateful the book has a second life as an anti-fascist tool, which it is. We're banning true anti-fascist literature, but that's what these make-believe anti-fascists think is fascist, so go figure. Must be nice to have so little problems that you can attack people, just retelling history. Spiegelman is speaking shortly after learning that a Tennessee school board voted unanimously this month to ban Moss. Now, unanimously. It was agreed that unanimously that this school board decided that kids should not learn about the Holocaust and the truth of what happened. And these are the same school boards that are saying that third graders need to learn about blowjobs and that we need to teach kids, all types of, sexual degeneracy. These are the same people. Sexual degeneracy, good. Holocaust history, bad. Got it. Which in 1992 became the first graphic novel to win the Pulitzer Prize. The two-volume comic biography chronicles his family's Holocaust history through the frame and tale of 70s conversation between Spiegelman and his estranged father. All told with the you think I'd know this word by now. Anthropomorphic imagery. The Jewish characters are rendered as mice, for instance, and the Nazis were cats. The 10-member board in McMinn County chose to remove Moss from its 8th grade language arts curriculum, citing the profanity and nudity. First off, nudity? What? Like cats? I think if I remember right, it showed like the concentration camps, they're all skinny and stuff, but these people are literally putting like sexual education in elementary school stuff, and profanity is probably something that was historically accurate that's not accurate today. But again, just like Tom Sawyer, like that was the time. And of course, we're talking about Nazis. Nazis didn't use the best language, but it was honest and real based upon the accounts of a survivor. So there's that. Now, the New York based author is sifting through the minutes of the board's January 10th meeting, trying to make some sense of the decision to target the graphic memoir, which previously has been challenged in California and banned in Russia. His conclusion: the issue is bigger than his comic book. In the current socio-political climate, he views Tennessee vote as no anomaly. It's part of a continuum and just a harbinger of things to come, Spiegelman says, adding that the control of people's thoughts is essentially to all of this. As such, school votes strategically aim to limit what people can learn, what they can understand and think about. He says there is at least one part of our political spectrum that seems to be very enthusiastic about banning books. Yes, I think we'll probably disagree on which part of the political spectrum, but there is one group of the political spectrum that is trying to ban books and speech. Definitely agree with you there. Not sure if we think it's the same one. This is a red alert. It's not just how dare they deny the Holocaust, he says, with a mock gasp. They'll deny anything. Spiegelman, 73, knows well the ways and whims of the educational decision makers. He cites how often The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn has been challenged and banned ever since its 1885 publication. And in 1986, just a few weeks after Book of Moss was published, William Faulkner's 1930 Southern Gothic novel, As I Lay Dying, enjoyed a regional spike in sales, but was banned by the Kentucky School District. As the Moss ban becomes widely publicized this week, after the vote was reported in the Tennessee Holler, the graphic novel had a surge in sales by Friday. The complete Moss hardcover was among the top 25 titles on Amazon's bestseller list, second among all historical biographies, as well as comics and graphic novels. Spiegelman says comics are often challenged in educational settings, partly because of the visual power of visual imagery. Jerry Craft's New Kid, Raina Telgemeier's Drama, and Alison Bechdel's Fun Home are among the acclaimed graphic novels that have appeared on the challenged list. Have appeared on the challenged list. And the spotlighted during Banned Book Weeks, the annual event that celebrates the freedom to read. One of the reasons Moss is so threatening, and one of the reasons some educators were trying to protect the idea of teaching it in a curriculum, was that it's in a comic form, Spiegelman says. The panel-to-panel narrative makes it easier to remember. The visual component, as well as with the underlying thoughts that needed to be communicated, because you can go from the past to the present to the future and back and forth as your eyes flits across the page. Kids do it instinctively. So as Spiegelman read the record from the board's meeting, he focused on their stated issue, stark imagery, as well as strong language. Spiegelman's mother died by suicide when he was 20, and in Moss, he depicts how his father discovered her lifeless body unclothed in a bathtub. Spiegelman also laughs in reaction to a board member bringing up the author's past comics contribution to Playboy magazine when assessing the anthropomorphic nudity in Moss, which includes stripped-down concentration camp prisoners. Yep, I knew it. That was all it was they literally, the Nazis took their clothes, and now we can't talk about Nazis. Spiegelman acknowledges that the voices who spoke at the meeting weren't monolithic by any means. One instructional supervisor spoke of Moss as an anchor book to begin teaching the Holocaust to children. I'm very passionate about history, and I'd hate to rob our kids of the opportunity. The member also noted Mr. Spiegelman did his very best to depict his mother's passing away. Amid the controversy, Spiegelman embraces the fact that Moss has an afterlife. We thought it would be self-published and a one-shot in our Raw magazine. I didn't realize that there would be many comics and graphic novels about the Holocaust to follow his, he said. Cumulatively, they make Holocaust comics more plausible and as part of the curriculum. So overall, this is a very awful precedent. This is not something that I want to see keep going. It's very important to teach history. This is a very important part of our history, and letting our children and grandchildren learn about what really happened is going to prevent it from happening again. But it seems like we're heading that way anyway. So people are, like, don't challenge. We're trying to make the Holocaust happen again. So let's let people forget. Let's take it out. We're going to talk about furries in schools and, give the kids sexually explicit workbooks. But then, even the fact that people were actually suffered and tortured, will get a book ban. So book banning is bad, no matter where, who, what, when, why, where. Terrible thing. Really love this book. If you haven't read this book, go out and get it. You have kids, get this book for your kids. It's important. It's important for history. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for your time, guys. Hope you had a great one. I'll be talking to you soon.